and hopefully to share with some folks that may have not heard this information, because as a parent, I can tell you that some of what we're going to talk about today seems a little counterintuitive. You really have to think about it and about the benefits of your children when it seems like your love for your children may make you want to do the opposite. And I can tell you from my own experience that when my little baby daughter fell asleep on my chest, it was the cutest thing in the world. And it made me want to fall asleep right with her. And I had to go against my own will, my own emotions, to make sure that I didn't do that, to make sure that I thought about her and her safety, and thought about the rules that we should follow when we're letting our child sleep. And the first one, which is, again, counterintuitive, is to let your child sleep alone. Let your child be away from your body where it feels so cute and cuddly and warm and loving, and say, wait a minute, there's something that is more loving, which is to do the right thing for the safety of my child. And so when we say that to let your baby sleep alone, we don't mean to put them in a corner somewhere and forget that they're there. We mean put them in a safe place where you're still keeping an eye on them. The other part of sleeping alone is not sleeping with all the cuddly stuffed animals and things that you want to put in with your baby. You got to think about this. A little innocent child that is just, falling asleep can roll over very simply, and that beautiful little cuddly toy then becomes something that they can choke on, that they could suffocate with, curl up with the wrong way. And same with blankets. So that leads us into rule number 2, which is to let your child try to ensure that your child sleeps on their back so that they don't roll over. Keep an eye on them so that they're not getting caught up in anything that could block their airways. And the fourth thing is to provide them with a safe space, as we have here today, showing, a crib or an approved play area, something that is a space where they will be safe. So all of these things, again, though they may not seem natural, try to help us prevent sudden infant death syndrome for babies. So I hope that, again, you can really take this to heart. Remember a couple other rules, and that is no nicotine, no smoking around children, because that can cause neurological issues that can impair their ability to breathe, particularly at a young age when exposed to that. And then also something that is changed for us grew up in the 70s and the 80s, where there was a lot of movement to make sure that mothers had their formula that they purchased. There is nothing better than the mother's formula, the mother's breast milk, that helps with so many other things that, and of course, formula that is purchased when necessary is a great thing. But mother's breast milk, there's nothing better for passing on immunity, helping to build the child's strength than providing breast milk for your child. So if you can remember the ABCs, keep your child alone, but watching your child, sleeping on their back and sleeping in an approved space such as a crib, then you'll be doing your part to help reduce, first of all, to save your own child. And second of all, to reduce this issue that I know none of the speakers that are going to come up after me ever want to deal with. It's one of the most heartbreaking things that you can think of is what seems like, it is an unnecessary loss of life for an infant. I mean, I can't think of much worse than that. So that's why we're here today. And with that, I'll just say a little proclamation, do my government. I did my dad part, and my hopefully leader for the community part, but here's the government side of this, is to make sure that we officially recognize today and this entire month for Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Awareness. Whereas sudden infant death syndrome is the leading cause of death in infants from 1 month to 1 year of age, with most deaths occurring between 2 and 4 months. Whereas in 2021, 112 infants were reported to have died of sudden infant death syndrome in Pennsylvania. Whereas most infants die of sudden infant death syndrome while sleeping with no signs of suffering. And whereas sudden infant death syndrome is sudden, silent, unpredictable, and I'm not going to agree with the word unpreventable, because we're here today to tell you at least some things that can certainly make the odds better. But there are safe sleep measures that reduce the risk of sudden infant death syndrome. Where since the start of the National Back to Sleep campaign in 1996, the number of babies dying of sudden infant death syndrome has decreased by more than 50%. Whereas it is recommended that infants under 1 year of age be placed on their backs to sleep, to lower the risk of sudden infant death syndrome. And whereas the York City Bureau of Health, along with sudden infant death syndrome advocates throughout this Commonwealth, are committed to enhancing the lives of infants by providing education, awareness, and advocacy on the issue of sudden infant death syndrome and infant safe sleep. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Michael R. Helfrich, the mayor of the city of York, Pennsylvania, do hereby proclaim October 2023 as Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Awareness Month in the city of York, as well as encourage all York City residents and other families to recognize the value and importance of sudden infant death syndrome prevention. With that, I'd like to introduce the director of our Bureau of Health Center at 435 West Philadelphia Street. You can visit if you have any questions about anything that we're talking about today. Dr. Tommy.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for being here to talk about this very important topic, sudden infant death syndrome. We know that one of probably the most heartbreaking thing that families could go through is the loss of a young one before they've even had a chance to live, before they've had a chance at life. And as the mayor said, we have made a lot of progress since the 1990s because we were able to do some of the things that we know of. There are so many things that we don't know of in this space, but there are some things that we do know help to protect children. So we have made a lot of progress. Unfortunately, we still have about 3,400 babies dying in the United States every year from sudden infant death syndrome. There was more heartbreaking to me is that particularly during COVID, we've seen that even while the rates have decreased in the general population, in Black families, Black mothers, and people that are from Native Indian, American Indian descent, we still have a very, very high rate. One infant death is one too many, but to have almost 200 infants die out of every 100,000 infants, about 214 infants dying from Black families every year. That's really unconscionable. We can do better. We know that there are some things that work. Some of my co-speakers today are going to be talking about it, but we definitely have a lot of work to do supporting the families that are disproportionately affected by this. Providing education, providing support. We do know that being able to have a crib works, but are we able to assure our families that we can provide something like this, or we can support them as they look for the healthiest options for their babies? We know that breastfeeding works, but how much support do we have out there? So there's definitely a lot of work, and everyone here and everyone out there that gets to listen to this has a role to play in that, to support the families that are mostly affected by this. Education is one thing, but we know that we have to do beyond that to enable enable families to do the right things for themselves and their families. So again, I think this is probably one of the most important things that we can be doing right now for families here in New York, for families in the United States. And I'm so glad that we have this day to remember that we all have a role to play in making things better for everyone. So thank you so much again. I'm going to hand over to Pam to come up. Pam is the York County Coroner.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. One of the hardest things that we do in our job is when we have to notify a family of a child's death. Obviously, by the time we get there, they already know of that death. But it's just a difficult thing. In these type of situations, unfortunately, the families struggle for a very long time, as many of you know. And there's a lot of guilt and a lot of what did I do wrong or what could I have done differently. And we, years later, still have families calling in and still struggling with this. And we try to connect them to the resources that they need, but it's just a really tragic situation. And I believe Dr. Goodstein used to talk about how, a moment of uncomfortable, dealing with the not getting proper sleep and having to sleep separate from your baby, while that's just a moment in time, if you don't make that right decision, then it could lead to a lifetime of reminding them and a lifetime of dealing with that tragedy. So we want to try and encourage them to, while it may not seem like the most convenient thing to do, put that baby in their own crib away from your bed. It can be right next to your bed, but not in the bed. And that's a really hard thing for families. Many times we go into the homes and the crib's there and they're not using it, or they're using it for other things. So just trying to teach them that that moment of inconvenience is going to ensure that their child will live a full life, hopefully. It's really hard sometimes, but we want to make sure that we educate them about that. So we have made some strides in York County. There are years that have been better than others, and every year is bad when there's the loss of even one, as she mentioned, and as the doctor mentioned, and we want to try and get to a point where we have zero. We haven't gotten to that yet in the last 10 years, at least, since I've been here. But we have seen an improvement. We had 8 10 years ago. Some of you remember that. And at this point this year, we maybe have 1 at this point, the way it sounds. But, we have several months to go, colder months. And we always worry a little bit more about, the families, whether they're going to snuggle with them in the beds or not. We want to try and make sure that that doesn't happen. So thank you to all of you who are out there really sending this message out, especially the nurses who are going into the homes and doing the education. We thank you for what you do. We thank you for the hospitals that are trying to get the word out. But it's something that we have to continually remind ourselves of over and over again. Even healthcare workers are guilty of this. Sometimes I'm a nurse, and I know for years, I grew up in the era where co-sleeping was encouraged, believe it or not. That was a long time ago, but it did happen, unfortunately, because people thought that was okay. But one of the biggest and hardest things is to kind of get through to the caregivers too, and the other family members who are maybe older and grew up like I did in that era. So we want to continue to try and get that education out, and try and get the young mothers to tell their caregivers, hey, this is how it has to be. No shortcuts, no ifs, ands, or buts. You need to make sure that my baby's in a safe place when they're sleeping, so that the caregiver doesn't fall back on some of those old patterns that are not healthy. So again, thank you for everybody that is doing the hard work out there, and we'll continue to press on and get to a year hopefully where we have none. So thank you.
Okay, hi, I'm Dr. Michael Goodstein. I'm a neonatologist at WellSpan York Hospital, Director of Newborn Services, and I serve on the American Academy of Pediatrics Task Force on SIDS. I'm the director of the York County Cribs for Kids program since its inception in 2003. So we've been helping families have a safe place to sleep for 20 years now, 20th anniversary. So the term sudden unexpected infant death, or SUID, is used to describe when an infant dies from any sudden and unexpected death, whether explained or unexplained. And this includes SIDS, suffocation and strangulation, and undetermined deaths. Unfortunately, as Dr. Tomey mentioned, we have about 3,400 babies dying in the U.S. every year before they reach their first birthday. That's one baby dying every 3 to 4 hours of every day of the year. It's an absolute national tragedy that we don't talk about, right? Every person that dies from a gunshot wound, every person who's in a fatal car accident, it's on the news, we talk about it. We don't talk about this. This is a silent tragedy, and this is an important day for us to talk about this because there are things that we can do to make things safer for our babies. We had 112 deaths in Pennsylvania for the last year on record, 2021. If we look at the Pennsylvania Child Death Review records, about 2/3 of these deaths, the babies were found in an unsafe sleep environment, and over half of them, the baby was found in an adult bed. You know, it's really hard to imagine the pain and suffering and the loss of a baby. All the hopes and dreams of what was to be is a future lost. And our hearts go out to the families who have suffered a loss in our community. There's no single or simple answer yet, unfortunately. Every day we're learning more about the possible causes of SIDS. Cardiac arrhythmias, or abnormal heart rhythms, represent about 10% of these deaths. Some of these deaths will have a genetic component, but there is no SIDS gene that will explain everything. We know that infections and an abnormal immune response may also play a role in some of these deaths. Our best model is the triple risk hypothesis, which says there's a combination of factors here. There's an unseen or intrinsic abnormality, usually in the brainstem, making it difficult for the baby to arouse to a threat in the environment. Most of these deaths occur in the first 6 months of life, so there's something that's going on in the developmental patterns during the first year of life. And then there's an environmental threat. So we talk a lot about having a safe sleep environment, because that's the one thing that we can really control here. Studies show that up to 90% of these deaths occur in infants during the first 6 months of life, with a peak during 1 to 2 months. There are things that we can do as parents and caregivers to prevent these tragedies, or at least reduce the risk, and make sure we're putting babies to bed in the safest way possible. So each WellSpan hospital is a Safe Sleep certified hospital. That means all of our maternity staff is trained in infant sleep safety. It means we counsel our families on safe sleep practices and high-risk behaviors that factor into sleep-related deaths. We have parents watch a video on infant sleep safety, and we give every family a wearable blanket and a safe sleep board book, which are up here on the wall behind me. When parents and caregivers have information on safe sleep standards, they're able to protect their babies at home. Additionally, WellSpan is about to embark on a new research-based program involving brief educational videos sent to new families during the first 2 months of life after delivery to reinforce these safe sleep messages during this vulnerable time period in an infant's life. So there are 3 things I like to share with you to remember about having a safe sleep environment, as the mayor alluded to earlier in his comments. And the first one is right here. Back is best, as babies sleeping on the back. Babies should always be placed on their back on a firm, non-inclined surface, and that's it. Nothing else should be in the crib with the baby. That means no toys, no stuffed animals, no bumper pads, no soft bedding, no blankets. When babies are inclined at greater than 10 degrees, they can easily flex their bodies and flip over onto their tummies. And then they have to use more muscles to keep themselves from face planting into the surface. And as they get more fatigued, there's the potential for suffocation when they're on an inclined surface. Sitting devices like car seats, strollers, and swings, and infant carriers and slings are not recommended for routine sleep, especially for infants younger than 4 months of age. Car seats, especially when the straps are open, can lead to entanglement and strangulation. When you reach your destination, take the baby out of the car seat if they're asleep and put them into a safe sleep environment on an appropriate flat surface. Sometimes I'm asked, if a baby can't have a blanket, won't the baby get cold? And what I recommend is either dressing the baby in layers or using a sleep sack or wearable blanket on the baby. But also overheating and overbundling and head coverings are associated with an increased SIDS risk as well. So there's no need to wear a hat for sleep. Just keep the room temperature comfortable. Some sleepers come with swaddles. Swaddling does not protect a baby against SIDS, but it can be a useful technique for calming fussy babies. So swaddling must always be with the baby on the back. And once the baby starts to show signs of rolling over, usually around 3 to 4 months of age, you need to discontinue swaddling. Weighted swaddles, blankets, and other clothing that are weighted are not recommended. Second thing I want people to take away from this today is to room share, not bed share. The American Academy of Pediatrics advises babies should sleep in the same room as their parents or caregivers for at least the first 6 months, and this can decrease the risk of SIDS by 50%. 50%. Babies should sleep in a crib, bassinet, portable crib or play yard that follows federal safety standards from the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Bed sharing significantly raises the risk of babies' likelihood of injury or death, and the AAP does not support bed sharing under any circumstances. But let me share some statistics with you so you can understand why this is so dangerous. The most dangerous place for a baby to sleep is on a couch or soft armchair or cushion. The risk of SIDS is 67-fold higher, almost 70 times higher, not percent, but 70 times higher risk of dying. When an infant sleeps with someone who is impaired because of fatigue or use of medications or substances such as alcohol or illicit drugs, it increases the risk of SIDS tenfold. When an infant is under 4 months of age, is sharing a sleep surface with someone other than the parent, or is preterm or low birth weight, the risk of SIDS is 5 to 10 times higher. In my routine practice, I ask parents how and where their baby is sleeping. I try to understand the parents' concerns so we can create a plan together. Some families decide to bed share due to cultural preferences or to facilitate breastfeeding. Sometimes parents unintentionally fall asleep in bed with their baby. I encourage families to have a plan if they're going to bring their baby into bed, especially for breastfeeding, to create a safe sleep zone. So if something happens, the baby will be in a less dangerous situation. And then if the parent wakes up and finds himself in that situation, move the baby back into their crib or pack and play as soon as possible. If the bedroom's not big enough for a crib, using a portable crib is a wonderful solution. If the mother at a C-section has difficulty with mobility, I suggest that they move the portable crib right up to the edge of the bed so it's easier to get to the baby. And if the parent is worried about the legs getting stuck in the crib slats, I suggest they use a sleep sack which keeps the legs confined. The third recommendation I want people to be aware of is that breastfeeding is highly recommended. Breastfeeding reduces the risk of SIDS. The AAP recommends babies be fed with human milk exclusively for about 6 months of life, and then it should be part of the older infant's diet for up to 2 years if desired. At WellSpan, we offer new mothers the availability to lactation consultants and various support groups and classes to facilitate their breastfeeding journey. And it's important to note that any amount of human milk feeding is better than none, with the benefits rising the longer you go. If you do it for at least 2 months, you will reduce the risk of SIDS by 50%. If you go out to 6 months, you reduce the risk by 2/3. But if families are unable to or choose not to feed human milk, it's important not to judge those who decide not to breastfeed. Other things that we can do as parents and caregivers, we can make sure our babies are up to date on immunizations. We can offer a pacifier at sleep time. Babies and parents should avoid being exposed to nicotine, alcohol, marijuana, opioids, and illicit drugs. There's a direct correlation between the amount of cigarette smoke during pregnancy and the risk of SIDS. We estimate that about 1/3 of SIDS cases would not happen if mothers did not smoke during their pregnancy. Avoid the use of commercial devices that claim to reduce the risk of SIDS and other sleep-related deaths. There's no evidence that any of these devices reduce the risk of these deaths. These could provide a false sense of security for parents and caregivers. Do not use home cardiorespiratory monitors as a strategy to reduce the risk of SIDS. Wearable monitors are not approved as a strategy to keep babies from dying. Parents can use them, but they're not a substitute for safe sleep practices. We should have supervised tummy time to facilitate infant development. I encourage parents to put babies on their tummy while awake and supervise for short periods of time, increasing the amount over the first 7 weeks until they're doing it 15 to 30 minutes a day. For more information on infant safe sleep, the NICHD has a Safe to Sleep campaign website where you can find information. The AAP has a site for parents, healthychildren.org, or you can go to the WellSpan website, or even better, talk with your doctor or provider. They're a great source of information. We want to work together with parents. We all have the same goal, which is to have your baby stay safe and live and thrive and make it to the first birthday. I'd like to finish just by summarizing my experiences at the International SIDS Conference, which was just held last week in Italy. Scientists and SIDS families gathered from around the world to discuss the latest research on SIDS. It was exciting to hear about the progress we were making towards understanding the causes of these tragedies. But the most touching part of the meeting was hearing from the families who had suffered the unthinkable. They shared the memories of their precious ones lost but never forgotten, a reminder to why we carry out the research, a beacon of hope for families who have recently lost a child, and a message to all families to take precautions to reduce the chance of this happening to you. I would like to thank the mayor and his team for their support of SIDS Awareness Month and my esteemed colleagues for sharing their time and expertise today. We'd like to take the opportunity now to answer any questions you might have for myself or for Dr. Tomey or Coroner Gay. Thank you.
So, thank you, Mayor. So at the back there, I have my wonderful, wonderful colleagues at the City of York Bureau of Health. They're with the Healthy Moms and Healthy Babies program. This group is absolutely phenomenal. They work with our pregnant moms from any time during their pregnancy to when their babies are over 2 years of, about 2 years of age, sometimes longer. These wonderful nurses and community health specialists, they work closely, they meet the moms where they are. So whether it's helping them get information about how to get cribs or how to get just whatever support they might need. We have a lactation consultant amongst them who is phenomenal and was very instrumental in setting all of this press conference up. So I know that they're sitting looking at me. Deb, thank you so much for all that you do. And all the work that you all do to support moms and babies. We also have this wonderful shirt over here that you have on the babies right there that says "This Side Up." They have been able to get those shirts printed in English, Spanish, and Asian Creole. It serves as an additional reminder for our moms and families in general to remember the back to sleep and all the safety things that we've talked about today. And lots of other educational support materials that we offer routinely whenever people come to us. We work very closely with Dr. Goodstein and Cribs for Kids. We work with some other providers for getting strollers and just whatever our families need.
Okay. Do you want to do a handshake with the proclamation, a photo thing?
Photo op?
Yeah, photo op, yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you all for being here.